If you have few or no friends, you likely have these 5 rare traits. If you have few or no friends, you've probably been told you're rare. Here's what a 2021 survey of 2,000 American adults actually found. Almost half of us report having 3 or fewer close friends. 1 in 8 has none at all. So the question is no longer why you're so unusual. It's why the math feels wrong about you anyway. The honest answer isn't that you're rare. It's that you're calibrated. This video is about the difference between a threshold and a deficit. Meet Theo, 34, works freelance, translating for hospitals. Partner lives in another city. 1 dog. A sister he calls on the 1st of each month. By the survey's definition, Theo has 0 close friends. He is also, by most measures the rest of his life uses, fine. Names and details have been changed. Theo is a composite drawn from common patterns I've encountered. 2 psychologists, Robert Koplan and Julie Bowker, have spent 30 years studying people like Theo. They've found 3 different reasons someone ends up with a friendship count like his. 1 is fear. That's shyness. 1 is dislike. That's avoidance. And 1 is something else. A preference for solitude without fear and without dislike. They call it unsociability. Their data going back to 2011 shows it doesn't track loneliness, depression, or anxiety the way the other 2 do. So the 5 traits we're walking through don't make you rare. They make you calibrated. The first one is the trait most people are embarrassed to admit out loud. Trait 1. The threshold filter. Most people meet someone new and start with the gain turned up. They let almost all of it in. The handshake, the laugh, the bid for shared opinion. The interaction registers as net positive almost by default. Other people meet someone new, and the gain is already calibrated lower. The same handshake, the same laugh, the same bid arrives at the nervous system. And most of it doesn't pass through. That isn't rudeness. It's a filter doing its job. You know this if you've ever sat through a conversation where everyone seemed warmed up but you, and tried to figure out, afterwards, what was wrong with you. Nothing was wrong with you. Your threshold was just doing its job. It was filtering for a specific signal, not noise, not theater, not performance, and most of what arrived didn't match. Snobbery is a moral position. A threshold is a perceptual instrument. You don't choose what your nervous system reads as costly. But you can stop apologizing for the readings. And here's where this gets physical. Because the threshold isn't free. Every time it fires, your body pays. Trait 2. The body's cost meter. Almost every video on this topic explains the next part the same way. You process more deeply. You analyze interactions on multiple levels. That's true. But it's the wrong organ. The reason a long social block feels the way it feels is not that you're thinking more during it. It's that your body is logging it as a cost most bodies don't log. The accounting happens beneath the thinking. Research by Elaine and Arthur Aaron in 1997 estimated that about 15 to 20% of people have what they called sensory processing sensitivity. It's not a diagnosis, it's a wiring difference. It shows up not in your thoughts, but in your shoulders an hour after coffee with someone exhausting. The battery icon turning red faster than the math seems to justify. Here's the part most people miss. Your body isn't being weak when it does this. It's being honest. The drain isn't proof that something is wrong with you. It's a receipt for what just happened. This isn't fragility. This is an honest meter. People with this meter tend to leave gatherings earlier than the room expects. They tend to know how much another person costs them before the conversation ends. And honest meters change how you spend. Trait 3. The inner 5 investment. Robin Dunbar, an evolutionary psychologist at Oxford, mapped this for decades. He found friendship doesn't live in a single number. It lives in concentric rings. About 1.5 people at the intimate center, usually a partner or a closest confidant. About 5 in the shoulder-to-cry-on layer. About 15 in the sympathy group. About 50 for the big birthday party. About 150 for the wedding. Each ring out costs roughly 3 times the time and emotional bandwidth of the one inside it. So if you've quietly poured everything into the inner 5, the outer 50 was never going to fit in what's left. That isn't a deficit. That's a portfolio decision your body made without consulting you. And the research on life satisfaction tracks the inner 5, not the outer 100. Inner 5 is where the math actually pays. Pause here for a second. I know what part of you is starting to wonder. Maybe this is just flattery dressed as research. Maybe I'm being told I'm calibrated when I'm actually just collapsed. Here's the only line I trust between those two. If alone feels like rest, you're probably calibrated. The body settles. the room expands. If alone has started to feel less like rest and more like the only place that doesn't hurt, that's not calibration. That's a different conversation. And it's not one a video can do justice to. This isn't a substitute for therapy. If alone has been feeling like the only safe room for a while, please reach out to a licensed professional. In the US, 988 is the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Free, 24/7. Outside the US, findahelpline.com. Everything else in this video assumes you're in the first category. Alone is rest. If that's you, keep listening. Trait 4. The one-bond math. In 2006, a psychologist named James Cone ran an experiment at Wisconsin. 16 married women, lying in an fMRI scanner, threatened periodically with a small electric shock. 3 conditions: holding their husband's hand, holding a stranger's hand, holding no hand at all. With the husband's hand, the brain regions that fire during threat, the cingulate, the insula, the hypothalamus, quieted significantly. With the stranger's hand, less. With no hand, the full alarm. Here's the part that changes the math of friendship. The size of the quieting scaled with the quality of the marriage. Not the existence of a hand. The quality of the bond attached to it. One high-quality bond was doing most of the work. Nico and Ida, also composite. Names and details changed, have been married 9 years. He's a software engineer. She works in hospital administration. They have 1 dog. A Saturday garden Ida plants every spring. 1 neighbor Nico plays board games with on Sundays. By the survey count, they have no friends. By Cone's math, they have everything the nervous system actually needs. A 2012 review by Andrea Beetz found pet bonding activates the same oxytocin system, the body's main bonding chemistry, as human bonding. Not as a substitute, as a real signal. 1 bond your nervous system trusts does more than 10 that drain it. Trait 5. Recovery after injury. Not everyone with few friends got there by calibration. Some people got there by injury. The friend who took the promotion and never explained. The group that quietly chose a side. The one who borrowed something and disappeared. The body remembers. Research on the avoidance subtype withdrawal that comes from dislike or fear of social contact has consistently shown it tracks loneliness, unlike unsociability. Bowker and Raja's work in 2011 made the picture sharp. And when avoidance is downstream of an old injury, that's where it tends to set up shop. But here's where the language matters. What people call a trust threshold isn't a personality. It's a recovery period, a psychological version of the way a bone knits. Months for some, years for others. The threshold rises after the harm. When the body decides it's safe, it lowers again. You can tell which one you're in by 1 test. Does the threshold feel chosen or imposed? Theo isn't recovering from anything. He was never burned. He just has a different ratio between what social contact gives him and what it asks. That distinction matters, because the 5 traits we've walked through show up differently in calibrated and recovering people. And there's one piece this niche almost always leaves out: the data we should have started with. So put them together: the threshold, the body's cost, the inner 5 investment, the 1 bond math, the recovery after injury. That's the profile. Now the part most videos in this space skip. In 2010, Julianne Holt-Lundstad and her team meta-analyzed 148 studies covering more than 300,000 people. Strong social relationships predict survival the way smoking predicts mortality. Roughly, that data is real. But the study measured strength of bond, not number of friends. And John Cacioppo, who spent his career on this, drew the line sharper. Loneliness is a perceived gap. Solitude is being apart. They are not the same thing. Being alone with 1 bond your body trusts is not what shortens lives. Being alone with nobody it trusts, even in a crowd, is. One thing I want to say plainly before we close: calibrated isn't better than collapsed. It isn't above. It isn't ahead. It's just more accurate about itself. If a person had a different nervous system in a different decade, they'd be reading themselves the way you're reading yourself right now. Same person, different math. 2 questions to take with you tonight. When you close the door and the room goes quiet, what arrives first? Rest or relief? If a person who wanted to stay close walked back into your life tomorrow, would your body open or brace? Rest and open. You're probably in the calibrated 5. Relief and brace. That's worth taking gently to a therapist. If you want videos that hand you a clearer question, not just a flattering mirror, that's what this channel is built for. Subscribe if that's the trade you want. 1 word in the comments: When the door closes and the room goes quiet, rest, or relief, I go through every reply.